I will. Good morning. I'm going to invite those of you standing to move this direction, if you will, please. That was by request of the President. Good morning. My name is Todd Raspberry, and I serve as the Vice President for Philanthropy and External Relations here at West Texas A&M University. It's my privilege to welcome you to the Fairley Club in Bain-Schaeffer Buffalo Stadium. This morning, we will be making an important announcement related to the Hill Institute. The Hill Institute was approved by the Texas A&M University Board of Regents on February the 17th, 2022. The Institute will serve as an interdisciplinary academy of researchers, teachers, and students. The Institute is named in recognition of Joseph Abner Hill, the second and longest serving president of what was then West Texas Normal College. As president and a historian, Hill advanced WT as a place of study and the Panhandle as a place of abiding principles and powerful cultural perspectives. He lived by a deeply held set of timeless values. He sought to impress upon the students, faculty, and staff of WT the importance of personal responsibility and self-reliance. Dr. Hill was steadfast in his belief regarding the importance of Judeo-Christian values in a free society. In addition, he practiced the values of the United States of America and the states of Texas, and without apology pronounced the durability of the founding values of our nation. The Hill Institute intends to stimulate thought about the role of values in addressing the human condition and how values impact the Panhandle and the world. It's now my privilege to invite forward the 11th President of West Texas A&M University, Dr. Walter Wendler.
Thanks, Todd. Appreciate it. He mentioned that J.A. Hill was the longest serving president in the history of West Texas A&M University. I found out recently I am currently the longest serving president in the Texas A&M University system. Not quite the same thing. I want to begin by thanking the inaugural Hill Institute board members for agreeing to serve on this board. Your leadership will shape the beginning work and direction of the Institute in a very positive way. So our work together over the coming weeks and months and years is profoundly important for how the Hill Institute will carry on the role of values in the educational mission of West Texas A&M University and contribute to a larger and greater Texas, and if I can be so bold, a larger and greater national image and vision for higher education, public higher education. We need it. The Lord knows we need it. Because of the gravity of the tasks inherent to the inaugural board, we have carefully and diligently selected members from across the nation who have shown through their actions to believe that values matter. Values matter. Through their actions and as leaders, as educators in institutions like universities, government, and the private sector to sustain family and civic life in a constitutional republic. And dare we ever forget that. Allow me to introduce the Hill Institute inaugural advisory board members. Dr. Ben Carson, world-renowned neurosurgeon and the 17th Secretary of the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Dr. Carson is joined by his wife, Candy. Would each of you please stand so we can recognize you? Chris Cloninger served almost 2 decades as the president and a member of the board of Aflac Incorporated. Chris is joined by his wife, Lisa. Would each of you stand? Lee Crisp, who is unable to be present, is one of the owners of Pepsi Mid-America of Nashville, Tennessee. And I wish Lee could be here. You'd really like to meet him. He was one of the founding directors of the board, the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. A tremendous leader, a very gifted young man. Alex Fairley serves as the chairman of Ocunet Company and is a nationally recognized expert in risk and cost management. Alex is joined by his wife, Cheryl Fairley. Tim Lambert, who I got to know at a Mexican restaurant in Plainview, Texas, is here. He serves as the president of the Texas Homeschool Coalition, which is a remarkable group that promotes the value, the dignity, and the importance of homeschooling. And that group is the largest homeschool network in the United States of America. Tim's wife, Lindsay, couldn't be here, but Tim, please stand and let us recognize you. Dr. Kevin Roberts, also unable to join us, was named in 2021 as president of both the Heritage Foundation and the Heritage Action for America group. He is a remarkable thinker and has been a leader in so many enterprises, and you'll get to know him in the coming years. Gentlemen, I'm on the committee, I'm on this advisory board myself, and I will quote Alex Fairley. The first time we get together, I want to look around the room and say, what am I doing here? And that's how I feel in this group of leaders. And Mary, my wife, is with me today, and we're so thankful. Mary, please stand and let us recognize. On the back of the inaugural board brochure is a QR code, which will take you to a website where you can find more information about the Hill Institute. And there's a lot of stuff to look at and read. Todd mentioned President J.A. Hill's influence at WT and across the Panhandle. You only heard a few sentences of Hill's contributions and accomplishments. When I started my job as president, Mary and I spent time reading and learning and trying to understand the history and culture of this place, of the Texas Panhandle. We traveled to schools all over the Panhandle. I was immediately impressed with Dr. Hill's long tenure of contributions to this university and simultaneously his contributions to the Texas Panhandle. He understood and valued the place. So many forces at work in our society today want to detach us from place. But I think being attached to place is an incredibly important thing. Serve where you are. Lead where you are. That's what's important. And I can't tell you how important his influence has been on our thinking. He spoke frequently and often wrote about the values of the people of the region. He believed they were essential to settling, shaping, and making prosperous the Texas Panhandle, the state of Texas, and indeed our nation. That's how that growth occurs. The very foundation of a constitutional republic is represented in this work, in my humble opinion. President Hill described history by revealing strengths as well as shortcomings in a way that highlighted the people of this place. His leadership and observations were the beginning of the Hill Institute. 10 values came to the forefront of thinking as we discussed the concept for the Institute over these last few years. Those values are trust, family, hard work, regard for others, personal responsibility, compatriotism and patriotism, virtue, faith, civic loyalty, and for me, the most important, rugged individualism. It's gotten a dirty word. It's gotten to be a dirty word in contemporary society. It is not. Dan Patrick, Texas Lieutenant Governor, at the announcement of the Alex and Cheryl Fairley gift, establishing the Institute recognized the importance of the Hill Institute values. Here is what he had to say.
You know, what is the Hill Institute really all about? And the President talked about all the issues it's going to address, and I read all the information that he sent me. It's about really leadership. That's what it's really about. You have to have leaders. And what is leadership based upon? That's what it's really all about in America. You know, Warren said he said when he came to Texas and you drove through the Panhandle with your wife, and then you kind of found out what the Panhandle was all about. This is the America that all America used to be and should be again. These are American values here.
The goal of the Institute is to have Panhandle values, Texas values, American values impact every profession and area of study at West Texas A&M through Hill scholars and Hill professors. Engineering, nursing, agriculture, business. I shouldn't have started this. I'm going to leave one out. I'm going to stop there. I'm too short. I apologize. But it is absolutely essential to effective professional practice and leadership in every walk and station of life. And that's what we need to do. I want to single out one particular board member for his commitment to the mission of the Hill Institute. Alex Fairley is a distinguished alumnus of West Texas A&M University, a donor, a visionary leader, and for me, most importantly, I am honored to be able to call him my friend. Cheryl and Alex are serving on the One West campaign leadership. Under Todd's direction and the leadership of our foundation board, they're doing an excellent job. We set a goal of 125 million, 5 years. We reached it in 2. Then we upped it to 150. Then we upped it to 175. And Todd hears me say this frequently. We've got a ways to go, but I want that goal to be 200 million now. We've got a gem on the prairie. The jewel in the crown of higher education in Texas is right here in the Texas Panhandle. What emerged in these early discussions with Alex and with Cheryl and with others was an idea of embedding traditional values, Panhandle values, Texas values, and American founding values into the educational fabric of West Texas A&M University, that these things would be locked together in a way that would produce a new and fervent professional dedicated to the sustenance of citizenship in a constitutional republic. We agreed that WT should be a place where students bring their values into the classroom and not check them at the campus gate, which is the case at too many universities. Students should reflect on how those values were formed in family life, how those values shape how they see others and the world around them, and how to ingrain those values into their thinking, their work, and their day-to-day existence. Why do we say this? Because values are necessary to sustain faith and family, work, and citizenship. And no one can separate their intellectual life from their value system and their faith life. Each is dependent on the other. A value-free or value-loosened, which seems to be the goal of much higher education. Don't believe me, watch the news. Educational experience attempting to be value-free is a fool's errand. And I'll say it in strong language, it's a fool's errand. Alex and Cheryl were willing to invest in an institute which would take seriously their values, the Panhandle's values, and American values. Other institutions in higher education have attempted initiatives to make values part of the educational mission. Two things will make the Hill Institute different from what other institutions have tried. First, WT has secured philanthropic support to conduct the work of the Hill Institute rather than government funding. The Hill Institute is a demonstration of the true public-private partnership, which is the nature of a Republican form of government at work, always a public-private partnership. And number two, WT is located in the panhandle of Texas. Place makes a difference. Panhandle people understand the role of values in their rural communities and in the work which produces the food, fuel, and fiber that feeds, powers, and clothes the state, the nation, and the world. That's what the Panhandle does. The Hill Institute is approaching values education differently than other public institutions. I am confident other institutions will follow where WT is leading. Russell Kirk postulated, and I quote, there exists an enduring moral order. That order is made for man, I'll insert for people, and man is made for it. Human nature is a constant, and moral truths are permanent. Some may not agree that there is an enduring moral order or that human nature is constant and moral truths are permanent. The work of the Hill Institute will welcome this debate through scholars who study how an enduring moral order impacts the professions and vocations of our students in their various studies and pursuits of personal and professional life. It's our job. It's our job. To Cheryl and to Alex, I say thank you for your confidence, your vision, your support for this place that we all call home. Thank you for agreeing to lead and serve through the Hill Institute. Very important. I look forward to working with both of you to shape values education at WT specifically and higher education generally. Now it is my pleasure to invite to the podium Alex Fairley. Alex.
Thank you, Dr. Wendler. Thank you for your just visionary leadership here. Probably most people here know, but Dr. Wendler works so hard. I won't tell you how old he is, but he works way harder than his age. And he's told me he's going to give 10 more years to WT before he retires. Right. That was a joke. He didn't say that. But Walter is an idea guy. If you've been around him talking about ideas, you've heard him say that ideas sometimes are divisive. And I've come to understand what he means. Ideas are such because they're new and they haven't been tried and tested, and they make us think, and they often require us to take risks. But the results can be transformative. Walter and I worked on shaping the Hill Institute for a good 2 years. I think might be closer to 3. And then it's been another year since we announced it. And I honestly feel like today really is the kickoff. I asked Dr. Wendler if we could pause before we began all the things in his head that the Hill Institute should be doing and build a world-class board. And I told him I didn't really care how long it took, that I felt like a world-class board was utterly critical and would decide how long our runway would be. But these board members, and I don't know why that we have like the men and the women today. The women are, I bet all these guys would tell you the women are more important than the men. But these board members represent some of the nation's best thinkers, leaders, educators, but mostly they are good people to whom values matter. I've shared in previous settings that Cheryl and I have been concerned about how and what universities are teaching students in the way of values. And as we began talking to Todd and Walter and others, we wrestled with the idea of giving anything to higher education, because we weren't sure that we trusted, its direction. The fact that Walter was here, we finally came to the conclusion was an opportunity that we couldn't pass up. I don't think in any tenure other than Walter's, hopefully the person who succeeds him will be just as incredibly committed to values. But we felt like this was like a window of opportunity that something like this could be started, because it had to be led by somebody like Walter and, frankly, Mary. So as the discussions about the idea of the Hill Institute progressed, he told me about Dr. J.A. Hill. And he brought me a book one day of Dr. Hill's speeches and sermons, and he pointed some things out in it to me. And I read one speech that Dr. Hill gave in November of 1932, so not amazing on math, but 90 years ago. 93, I guess. Sure, that can do that math. At a time when the very idea, in that era, the very idea of our nation's investment in education was under assault. It was a big question. Should we invest in education in this country? It's hard for you to fathom that now when we've made these massive investments. But in those days, it was a big question. Should we be doing that? And here's what Dr. Hill said in November 1932. Quote, "Insofar as the educational system of this country is inadequate for the achievement of the purposes for which it was created, it behooves us to seek every means of improvement. What Texas and America need today is a leadership of intelligence and virtue. Education must take more account of permanent values." End quote. I was inspired by that. When it came time to name the institute, in the giving to university business, always something is named after the giver, the donor. And in our discussions, just in their graciousness, they assumed this would be somehow named fairly. But it wasn't a 2-second discussion in Cheryl's and I mind that the person who the Hill Institute should be named after, at that time it was just some institute, was Dr. Hill. It was so easy. Ben, Chris, Tim, Kevin, and Walter, I'm honored and energized by the thought of working alongside you. Walter's right. I told him that I wanted the board to be a group of men or women who I would walk into the room with and wonder how I got in. I can tell you that we've so succeeded in that. I will never sit at the head of the table of a board meeting. So thank you for agreeing to serve. And I want to also thank your wives, Mary, and of course Cheryl, Candy, Lisa, sorry. We know you'll give also to it. These values that the Hill Institute represents are instilled by a vigorously pursued faith life. They cannot be owned by a race or a political party. They are community and personal values, and they should be political and national values. They deserve careful consideration and study, because our nation and the world are in desperate need of a rudder to guide us. The board will intentionally seek ways these values can be coupled with excellent teaching to produce a different kind of nurse, engineer, teacher, musician, business person, rancher. Last night on the drive-in from the airport, Candy and Cheryl, Candy's a musician, they were talking about music and some things that I don't understand, but music, very musical people. And they were talking about some famous composers. I actually did recognize a couple of names of the composers they were talking about. And Candy was talking about some of these people and how they had embedded faith into their works. And not that that's, in fact, most people probably don't even know that. and it shouldn't be the thing that carries the day in discussion, people like, Bach and those people, but it's really true that these values should cut across every sector of society, no matter who you are, no matter what you do, no matter how important people think it is or not, no matter what status it has or not. These values affect every single person and every single profession, and will affect every person that walks out of WT with a degree to go do something what they're going to do next. The Hill Institute will find ways to encourage students, as Walter said, to not check their values at the campus gate. Instead, it will encourage them to carry their values into their study and life in a way that connects heart and mind rather than separates them. You see, students from all over this region come here with these values. And through the Hill Institute, WT will reinforce the best of what families and houses of worship and places of business, farms and ranches, and the oil fields will instill in those that come. It's a simple truth. The way you live matters. The way we live matters. The Hill Institute will encourage and enrich these values as the foundation of being an effective citizen in a constitutional republic. So after a year of hard work, listen, when you want men like this to be on the board, you don't I look them up in the phone book and call them up and say, "Is Dr. Carson in? We wonder if he comes serve on our board." And I can tell you the way we connected these people, I had really almost nothing to do with it. None of them would have known me or returned my call. But Dr. Wendler and others have just worked so hard to bring this group together, and it's finally time to get to work. There's a lot of work to be done to embed values education into the fabric of WT and public higher education across the country. Before I introduce Dr. Carson, I'm going to tell you a little funny and embarrassing story. So last night, and Dr. Carson has told me to call him Ben. It's not coming out that way. Dr. Carson and Candy, we picked them up from the airport last night, and we were driving from Amarillo to Canyon, and I'm driving along, and there's red flashing lights in the back, and I'm getting pulled over by a policeman to get a ticket. And I wasn't paying attention to how fast I was going. I was trying to listen to Cheryl and Candy's discussion about J.S. Bach in the back seat. And so the guy pulls me over, and as he's coming, I'm kind of thinking, and I'm like, I also don't even have my wallet with me, so I didn't have a driver's license. He comes up, because we were on the interstate, on I-27, he comes up to, Dr. Carson was sitting in the right seat, and he comes up to his side, away from the highway, and he's got his flashlight, and he shines it in, and he's kind of like, "Sir, he was going down the road, the highway, the speed limit, and I just flew by and going 85 miles an hour." And so he's kind of stunned, like, it's kind of like, were you dumb enough to drive by a police going that fast? And he didn't say it quite that way, but that's what he was thinking. And I said, "Sir, I'm sorry. I was speeding. I'm in no rush. I'm guilty. I kind of want to say, would you just give me a ticket, get this over with, please?" And he said, "Do you have some insurance?" And he said, "Do you have a driver's license?" I said, "No, I don't have my wallet." And of course, Dr. Carson and Ken, they're just sitting there not saying anything. They're probably thinking, what in the world kind of people have we gotten connected with? And I said, "Sir, I don't have," he said, "You mean you don't even have a driver's license, or you just don't have a wallet?" I said, "No, I don't have a wallet. I really do have a driver's license." He asked for the insurance. Of course, Cheryl has insurance. She shows it to him. He looks at it. He said, "Sir, will you please get out of the car?" So I get out of the car, go in the back, and he said, "Sir, who's riding in the front seat with you?" And I said, "That's Dr. Ben Carson." I was kind of thinking, oh, I think this is good for me that he noticed that. In Amarillo right now, some people like me, some people really don't like me. So I wasn't really sure. But I said, "Dr. Ben Carson." And he said, "You mean the Dr. Ben Carson?" I said, "Yes, sir, the Dr. Ben Carson." He said, "Where are you going?" I said, "We're going to Canyon to see Dr. Wendler." He said, okay, today's your lucky day. I'm giving you only a warning. So he did. He got Dr. Carson's signature. He had a little business card, got his signature. Candy graciously told him how much we appreciate our law enforcement, like the best compliment he ever got. Sent us on our way. It was very embarrassing. But I realized I could drive to Canyon at whatever speed I wanted the rest of the way. When we asked them to join us, we weren't thinking that those are the things that we would get help with. They're much, much more important. But I want to say to you, men, and the two that aren't here, I'm so honored. I'm so honored to be on this board. I'm so honored that you took our time, that you came this way. So I can't say strong enough how honored we are to have you here to help us. And so we've asked Dr. Carson to address us briefly. And so let me welcome Dr. Ben Carson.
Well, thank you all. Candy and I are absolutely delighted to be here, particularly on an occasion like this. The Windlers are some of the finest people we've ever met. And, the whole concept of education has been so vitally important to us. Starting the Carson Scholars Fund, the Little Patriots program, all of these things, so vitally important. Because we realize that we have adversaries. We have people who actually don't like what we do as a nation, don't like us, have tried to infiltrate our system. It was Vladimir Lenin who said, "Give me your children to teach for 4 years, and the seed that I sow will never be uprooted." And our founders understood that if we were going to have a country that was successful, it would have to be a country that had values, that was virtuous in what they did. And our founders were very smart people. They were intellectuals. They studied every single governmental system that had ever existed in the world. And they were eclectics. They took the good stuff out and they left the bad stuff. They took the good stuff for themselves and they left the bad stuff out. And it did us very well for a very, very long time. Interestingly enough, if you go to the congressional record, January 10th, 1963, Congressman Herlong of Florida read into the system the 45 goals of communism in America, what they plan to do to erode this country. Things like gaining control of the school system and the teacher unions so that they could indoctrinate our kids, gaining control of the media and Hollywood so that they could absolutely change the cultural values that existed in our country, making sexual perversion normal, natural, and healthy, denigrating the role of the family and fathers in the family. The list goes on, and you can see the very things that are happening in our society. And that's why it's so vitally important to have a university like this, where not only do we pursue the intellectual things that universities are known for, but also to bring some virtue and some values back. Interestingly enough, if you go back to the beginning of our country, our universities, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, they started out as Bible colleges, as places where they wanted to produce men of the cloth who could go out and disseminate the word to people and disseminate values to people. And now those very universities have gone to the other end of the spectrum. But it's still very important to disseminate those values. And a value-laden education is a very good education. It did wonders for me. I was a horrible student. And, my mother, who had very little education, was very observant. She worked as a domestic, cleaning other people's houses, and they had very nice houses. And so she was a spy. She said, I'm going to see what these people are doing. And discovered that they didn't watch a lot of TV and they read a lot of books. And she came home and imposed that on my brother and me. And we were not happy campers, I mean, in today's world, we would have called social services. But, we had to do what she said. We had to read those books. And as I started reading about people, intellectual people, entrepreneurs, people like the people sitting here on the board, and I started reading about scientists and surgeons, and I began to realize that the person who has the most to do with what happens to you is you. It's not some circumstance. It's not other people. It's you, yourself, and the values you have and the personal responsibility that you develop. And it makes all the difference in the world. And I went from the bottom of the class to the top of the class in a year and a half. And I must say it felt pretty good. All the students who used to laugh and call me names were coming to me and saying, Benny, how do you work this problem? And I would say, sit at my feet, youngster, while I instruct you. I was probably a little obnoxious, but the fact of the matter is, it's the education that gives you the kind of value that people need. And that's what's needed in our society today. Everybody has a sphere of influence. And what are we seeing in our nation right now? People becoming enemies, wedges being driven between us on the basis of race, age, income, gender, political affiliation, religion, and it's making us into enemies. I have news for you. We are not enemies. Take the first letter. Take the first letter of each one of those words. Wayne. We are not enemies. We've let hatred and division wax for a long time. Now it's time to let it wane. And the way we do that is we produce the leaders of tomorrow at universities like this, through institutions like the Hill Institution. And it means we have to be courageous. One of the things that I discovered when I was running for president, traveling throughout the country, to the smallest little hamlets in Alabama and North Dakota, to the largest cities, is that most of the people in our country have common sense. What they lack is courage. People would stand in the corner and stare at the floor rather than speak up for what they believe in. And we need to understand that if you're going to be the land of the free, you also have to be the home of the brave. And when Alexis de Tocqueville came to our country in 1831, because the Europeans were so fascinated with how this nation, barely 50 years old, was already competing with them on virtually every level. He was ostensibly coming to study our penal system, but he started looking into everything. He was very impressed with our government, our checks and balances. He was very impressed with our economic system that encouraged entrepreneurship and innovation. He was very impressed with our educational system. The fact that he could find a mountain man and the guy could read. The guy could tell him about the Declaration of Independence. But the thing that really blew him away were our churches and those sermons that came out of there. Sermons that inspired a ragtag bunch of militiamen to defeat the most powerful military force on earth and gave the people a sense of morality, a sense of what was right and what was wrong. And he concluded his 2-volume series, Democracy in America, by saying, America is great because America is good. And if America ever ceases to be good, she will cease to be great. And through institutions like the Hill Institute, we can make sure that America is good and America is great. Thank you.
I'm going to ask the board members to stand up one more time, and please. And let's thank them for their volunteer service on the Hill Board. Thank you all for attending today. This concludes our formal program. Media, Chip, where's Chip? Here's Chip. Media, if you will get with Chip, we'll provide you an opportunity for interviews. Thank you all very much for being here.